everyone, and welcome back to the Laundry Talk Show, episode number 4. Today, my special guest is Denise, my best friend.
Hello.
And she will be joining us today to answer some questions. Today's topic is going to be on what do you look for when you're enrolling your children in a daycare setting, such as a home-based daycare. So, if you haven't checked out our first 3 episodes, please do so, and let's get on with our interview. So, today's interview is going to be again on looking for home daycares. So what I mean by that, I mean as like in coming from like an apartment, a person's home, the provider's home. So like an apartment, a house, other than a building or institutional setting. So for example, we both actually work at a home-based daycare, and we just thought it would be a great idea to see what we felt as mothers if we're looking to put our children somewhere else. Let's say we didn't work where we work right now. We wanted to put our daughters in another setting. Or for example, if people come to our daycare and they want to enroll their children, it's just interesting to see what is their perspective or what would they look for. And throughout the years, we've gotten that. We've asked, what is it that you look for when you're looking for a daycare? Just kind of a little questionnaire that we've had. And now we want to just make a video to let you know what we think and see what you guys think in the comments. So the first question is, what is the most important thing to you when you're looking for a daycare? Is it cleanliness, structure, food, safety, or other?
My number one would be safety. I feel with safety, other things come along. Like you'll be clean because you're gonna keep the place safe, so you'll be clean. Mm-hmm. Food wise, the food area would be clean. So my first number one thing would be definitely safety.
Yeah, and to make sure the children don't get hurt.
They don't get hurt. Exactly. Mm-hmm. They don't get hurt. They don't trip. It's always gonna happen. Kids are active. Kids like to run. They like to play. They like to jump. They like to climb. It's always gonna happen. But if you don't have everything safety, like organized mm-hmm. and outlet covers and all that stuff, then it's gonna happen even more often. So I feel like safety, it would be my number one.
I think I feel like with everything has to have safety, like Denise said. For example, in order for you to be safe, you cannot have a lot of clutter around. You have to make sure that sharp objects are covered, that edges are round or they have protection on them. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that the food you're serving is in a clean environment. You have to make sure everything is up to date, nothing is expired. Things like that come with safety. That's safety, but that also has to do with other things. So I feel like safety, as you said, and just kind of like extending from what Denise just mentioned, has to do with everything in it. So another thing is safety also has to do with how the providers and the assistants are treating the children. Are you verbally abusing them? Are you sitting them away from a group and kind of making them feel bad about their actions or things like that? Mm-hmm. That has to do with safety. Mm-hmm. If you have to be in a safe, trusting, comfortable environment in order for you to be yourself, in order for you to give the best that you can give as a child, for example. So I feel like safety, like you said, is the most important thing. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the only thing, and everything else kind of like, whatever, it doesn't matter, but mm-hmm. it is very, very important. Mm-hmm. So if, let's say you had to pick your top 3 things when you're going to step into a daycare, a home-based daycare, and you're going to make your assessment on day 1, other than the safety, as you look around and you interact with the staff and you feel the vibe of the environment, what else would you look for other than safety? What are the 2 things?
Cleanliness and structure. You would have to go in and see if there's any activities that they do, any artwork that they do. If I go in and the place is empty, I'm gonna assume they don't do anything, or they don't do much to teach the children. But if you see artwork put up, you see letters, numbers, countries, they're doing something. Mm-hmm. They're teaching the children something. So that would be the other 2.
And with structure, it doesn't mean that you're doing like rigid. In the daycare that we have, for example, And again, let's just, I don't want people to think, oh, because you have a daycare, you know, you're inclining more to this or that, or you're biased or something. But let's say I go in, I have a 1-year-old, she has a 4-year-old. Because other than that, my children are older. But I have a 1-year-old, she has a 4-year-old. If I go into an environment and I feel like it's welcoming, like I come in and I feel like the person is being gentle and the person is being sweet and accommodating and understanding that my child just walked in for the first time.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's important. Then I see their safety. I look around real quick, I see that there's safety. Then, as you mentioned, the other part is the kind of more structured. Like, you just don't have everything just thrown around. There has to be a theme, or there has to be a reason for things. So let's say you see their artwork. Let's say you have art on one side or math on the other side, or you have science on the other side. Again, age appropriate, of course, because it's a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. But you see that they're doing something. They're making an effort. They're not just throwing things together and just like, that's it. Just bring your kids in, leave them here. As long as they don't fall, it's okay. But what she says, like, more of a structure, more of your time, the kids' artwork, their time, their interest, and you see it all over. I think that's pretty important. So I guess we had the same. I don't think there's anything else other than that. I want my child in an environment that's nurturing. I want an environment that's nurturing for her, that has some structure to her, because later on she's going to be going to school at some point, and the structure has to start with time. Kids don't just learn in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It takes time. So like you said, safety, structure, and cleanliness. Those are 3 things that I think we agree are really important, and we look for as well. The next thing is, how important is academics in a daycare setting for you? Do you feel that a daycare should be more laid back, fun and games, kind of singing, and that's it? Or do you feel like they should have some type of structured activities? They should start teaching kind of early on, and it should start leading to preparing them for kindergarten. Do you feel like which one, laid back or more structured and learning?
I feel like they should have more structure, because you are preparing them for a school setting, and also at home they should be teaching them. So you have to also continue that where they go. It's not just like, okay, home, and then you're gonna go to daycare, play all day, and then in the weekends you learn. You have to teach your children every single day something. That's how I feel. Like, they should learn something every day, or continue the learning. Good communication with the providers and assistant is also important when you have your child in a daycare, because you get to know what they're learning, and then you take it home and you teach them, or you keep moving along with the lessons that are also provided. Fun, of course, it should be fun everywhere, they go, but you can have fun and teach. You can have, you can teach something that's fun. With songs, they learn. Dancing, you learn. Exercising, you learn. And these are things that it's fun for them, but they also learn. They can learn parts of their bodies. They can learn, if it's bilingual, they can learn English and Spanish of the song, and they'll know what they're saying. So I feel like it's not just, just sit there and just do whatever. There has to be some form of structure, so you can move it along for when they're in school. Like, okay, I know this, and they're not strangers, or it's not something foreign to them. Like, what's gonna happen now? Like, if they start at daycare, well, you start at home, onto daycare, and then onto school. So once they're in school, they're more comfortable with what's going on in their environment.
No, that makes sense. That's true. So you feel like it should be a hybrid, basically. Like, there should be some traditional thinking in terms of the daycares, where you do have games and the fun, and you do have songs and all that, but you want to be more like, you want a place that's more also progressive, where you might even include some electronics for the older kids, and also you want to include learning. Counting shouldn't just be sitting down or using flashcards and just drilling the children. I guess we agree on that as well. It should be more of a combination of a hybrid of these 2 things, these 2 learning practices of the play and learning through always play, but also adding a little more to it and bringing in possibly technology into it as well. But I feel that you know, as long as you have a lot of physical activities and movements and you include that as well.
Yeah.
So if you're learning about numbers, then you can possibly do an activity where, let's say they have circles on the floor and each circle has a number and a color. So a blue circle with a number 1, a red circle with a number 2, and then you kind of like, oh, let's hop to number 1, or let's hop to number 2, or let's start with number red 3. So it is fun. You are doing a game, but as you said, you are teaching them something, and you're also including physical activities in it. So I feel like it has to be more well-rounded. The reason that I brought this question up is because I have had parents, you know, within the time that we've been working at the daycare, that have mentioned basically, you know, kids shouldn't really be learning. They should just be having fun and singing and jumping and socializing, and that's great. That is really, you know, at an early age, you do have to do that. You do have to socialize. You do have to have the fun and the games and all that. But it doesn't mean that you don't teach them structure, because what happens is, if they go hand in hand, by the time they get into school, they already understand. They're not there feeling like, I feel like the kids that do have a structure are less likely to cry all the time, feel abandoned and left, you know, left there, and then they're not gonna see their parents again. They're more understanding. They understand what is being expected of them, and it's easier for them to cope with the changes and cope with the whatever intense work that they feel they might get. So if they're presented with something for the first time in school, numbers, letters, oh, now we're going to teach you vocabulary. They might have even spelling tests if they start off at 5 years old. I think they do have spelling tests in like kindergarten grade.
Probably, yeah.
So if you put a child that only has played and socialized and jumped around and really didn't have any structure, how do you expect this child to do well in this new environment? First of all, it's new adults, so basically new teachers. You have new students, so basically you have to make friends now. There's a bunch of rules and regulations because it's a school institution, so you have to follow that too. And then you're away from mom, dad, grandpa, whoever you used to be. So instead of just scaring the child, thrusting them into this environment and having them basically sink or swim, why don't you start the structure early on? But do it age appropriate. Don't expect a 1-year-old to sit for half an hour and do an activity. I mean, probably don't expect a 4-year-old to do it either, unless they like that, unless it's something that they want to do, unless they need more time than other children. But just keep in mind the age, and keep in mind what is the main goal at the end. After they come out from our care, they're going to an institution building. So a school setting. That's no longer a home setting, no longer an extension from their known home environment. So if your main goal is to get them to that point, you're not going to homeschool them yourself, you're going to put them in a school, then why not start little by little, giving them the tools that they need to actually do well, you know, to actually succeed in that other environment. So the last part that we want to touch upon is something very important, and we have our own opinions about it and why. And it's not something that's just an opinion as a daycare provider or, you know, daycare, child care takers. It's not just about us as parents, but we also have taken a lot of training. We also have taken a lot of courses in order for us kind of to answer this question as well. So within the years that we've been working with children in the child care industry, we have come across this topic, and basically it's the topic of the programs in school. So I don't know if you all know, or if some of you know, that schools have been accepting children younger and younger every year. It started off you went into kindergarten and that's all. Then you went to preschool, which was pretty much 4 years old. Last year, September 2019, they opened up the threes program, so they were taking children in public schools as young as 3 years old. And now it seems that they're taking, a lot of schools are taking 2-year-olds, and they're even thinking some schools of taking 1-year-olds in public schools. So not only that, but they're thinking of extending these programs to help parents out up until like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, we just mentioned about structure, and it's important to start getting used to it and all that. But if you take a child that's, you know what, before we even get into what we think, let me just ask the question. What are your thoughts? And this is also for you guys, the audience, if you guys want to put your comments, or if you want to mention an experience that you had with these programs. What are your thoughts on enrolling children in school, in a school setting, as early as 4 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old, and quite possibly 1 year old? So how do you feel and why?
Well, for me, I feel every parent knows their children, and they know their capacity, what they're capable of doing. And as for me, I would not put my child in a school setting at the age of 1, 2, or 3. And my daughter's 4, and I'm still thinking about it. I feel it's too much for them. You're coming from a home to unknown people already when they enter daycare. So it's already unknown to them. But it's a smaller, like here, it's a smaller environment. It's a home, more nurturing to them. So it's like a continuation of home.
Yeah.
So I feel, or extension of home. I feel in a school setting, it's you go from home and you're going into a circus.
Into a circus. That's a good one.
It's a lot going on. There's a lot of people. It's not just the classroom. You're talking about a whole school, a whole building, full of different people, teachers, janitors, lunch ladies. It's just so much for them to take in at such a young age. And I feel like they won't understand. They won't understand. They won't open up. It's too much for them to open up. Like what are they going to open up to? Which one goes first? So I feel it's a very confusing environment for them. Yeah. I wouldn't put my daughter, because like I said, I know my daughter, and I know that she wasn't ready at 2. She wasn't ready at 3. And I'm thinking about maybe September, and even that I'm probably just gonna start kindergarten. I'm not sure. But I feel people need to think more about their children than the financials. Yeah. Because I feel like that's the bottom line when it comes to placing them in a daycare or placing them in a school setting. The school setting is free, so everyone's just thinking like, oh, it's free and they're gonna be in school. But I feel like if you know that they're not ready for that, then you have to make the sacrifice of paying a daycare or paying your mother, paying someone, because they're not ready for that environment. If as parents, as adults, we have a hard time to deal with certain situations at the same time, how is a 2-year-old supposed to know what to do at an environment like that?
No, and I agree. I completely agree with Denise. I completely agree with you. I feel the same way. I have 3 daughters. I have a 21-year-old. Sorry, she turned 21. I have a 21-year-old. I have a 10-year-old and a 1-year-old. I did not think of putting my daughter in preschool the first time. I put her straight into kindergarten. And when she went into kindergarten, even though her first language, for example, was Spanish, the year before putting her in school, I started immersing her more in English. And when she went to school, she knew everything: her name, how to read a little. She knew her letters, her numbers, her shapes, all that stuff. I did that at home. There was no reason to put her in school when, I already could do everything. Again, if you can. The second time around with my 10-year-old, I started off her with a program called Your Baby Can Read, and I pretty much did everything at home. I worked, but I didn't work as much, so I had the opportunity. Again, for the moms that do not have the opportunity to put your children, to keep your children home and work with them, then I could understand thinking about it. But this is the thing: if you're going to think about putting them somewhere because you can't have them at home, you still have an option. Either put them in a daycare setting or put them in the school. I just feel like Miss Denise touched on a point very important: the nurturing part. We have had children from our care that have gone to a school setting, and it's been difficult to them. And I feel like Miss Denise kind of touched upon it, and I'll just give a little bit extra on what she said, because I agree with what she was saying altogether. So when you have children, for example, of the same age in the same setting, for example, in school, all the kids that are in the 2s program are pretty much 2, all the kids in the 3 are 3, and so on and so forth. So when you have children that are the same age in an environment, as opposed to having them in a daycare where you have a mixed age group, when you have them in the same age group, I feel like it's more difficult individually for the children to become leaders. I feel like there's more of a possibility or a more chance for them to become a follower than a leader because of the high competition that they have, since every peer is the same age. Now, when you have the children in a mixed age group, again, this is not just coming from our opinion, it's coming from our research and it's coming from our training. So this is really something. When you have the children in a mixed age environment, there's more potential for the older children to be leaders and for the younger children to learn from the older ones. They can learn sympathy, they can learn compassion, they can learn about leadership, the younger children from the big ones. They can learn to be good role models. They can learn about patience and turn taking. Now, for the older children in the mixed age group, I'm talking about a daycare, for example, the older children can learn how to care for the younger ones. They can learn that there it's not just about them. So as opposed to being so egocentric, because it's all about them, they start actually learning at an early age, earlier than another age group. They can start learning about also turn taking, being careful with other children, being mindful of their actions in this particular environment, and from there on in life, being mindful of the other people around them, their surroundings. They learn to be more acceptable of different age groups, but not just that, they learn to be acceptable of races, of other races. They learn to be acceptable of other people. They learn to just be accepting of the world because they understand about the differences early on in life. Now, also in terms of finance, I know it's easier to put a child in the school where you pay nothing versus a child in an environment at daycare because you have to pay out of pocket. But there is so much that you can get from that environment. Now, this is not saying that no one should put their children in a school setting for 2, 3, 4-year-olds, 1-year-old. First of all, always, that's up to the parent. That's always going to be up to the parent or the parents or the guardian or whoever it is in charge of the child, number one. The second thing is, that doesn't mean that every child cannot thrive in an environment of like a school setting. Yes, you can. My children, for example, I started my older one for kindergarten, but my middle one, I started her in pre-K. So she started when she was 4. But when she started school, she was so ready. She was ready. She could have done great in kindergarten, but I wanted her to start with her age. So I put her in pre-K. She went to a Montessori school where the philosophy is that everyone learns individually, as opposed to everyone grows together as a group and they just go on to the next stages as a group. So that was great for her. And I feel like because they had that mentality, because they offered that kind of philosophy, it worked for her. But if the environment for my daughter had not been a private school and had been a public school, I don't think she would have done as great. I feel like she would have kind of shut down because she was very shy growing up. She still is, but she was very shy. She was very quiet. She worked well with others as long as they were welcoming. But if they weren't very welcoming, if the teachers, for example, would not have been very nurturing, I don't think she would have blossomed the way she did. But when she started the fourth program in the Montessori, she already knew how to read books. She was already reading Dr. Seuss books. She was already getting 15 vocabulary words a week. So it was different. I feel like Denise said, you know your child. If you feel that your child is not going to do well in this environment, you have private schools, you have daycares, you have like she said, possibly a relative or someone, or if you can do it, I'm pretty sure you can do a lot more than they'll be giving them in the school environment. Also, when they're in school and they're younger kids, they don't do too much of the structure and the academics. For example, in a home-based daycare that we have, I'm not saying, again, not every home-based daycare, because I'm pretty sure a lot of stuff comes out of the news and things happen. It's not just everywhere, but we're just talking about what we know, what we've seen, the providers we have worked with, seeing their daycares in their environment, just the positive, good ones. I noticed that they're not going to teach them as much, but we have a lot of leeway. We have a lot to work with. We could constantly change our curriculum. We can offer dual language learning. We can offer nurturing. There are children that they go to, that they have left from a program that they're used to getting their milk warmed up, and they're like 4 years old, 3 years old. They're used to that extra attention, extra love, extra personalization from each child. You know, some children still like to to maybe we had to be a little next to them for them to fall asleep. Some children just need a little extra, and just in another environment they're not going to get that. And I'm not saying that the teachers or the schools cannot try to accommodate, but it's just so much more difficult for them to do it than it is for us to accommodate in this environment, in this smaller space, smaller, more nurturing environment. So just think about those things when you think about putting your 2-year-old, your 1-year-old, your 3-year-old in that environment. If you gave them the tools to survive in that environment, kudos, great, awesome. If your child doesn't have the tools they need to survive in that environment, not just to survive, to thrive in that environment, then kind of think about your options and see what can be done. Or possibly try to see if you can do it on weekends or on your days off and give them a little extra, kind of get them ready. Maybe do play dates. But some kids, I feel that they come from being a single child in an environment where there's like maybe one parent or maybe 2 working parents. They don't have a lot of time for the child, and then they throw them in this environment of learning and a bunch of people and it's just a lot for them. They still need a little bit extra, a little bit of more love and care and attention and kind of one-on-one. So those are our thoughts today on home-based daycare versus public school settings. Remember, this is public school settings for younger children as young as 1 and 2 years old versus putting them in a daycare, home-based daycare, for example. I'm not saying anything, they might do better if you put them in a private school. A lot of times when you pay out of your pocket, when you're the one covering or you're getting financial aid or something, when it's something private, I feel like they give more. You get more because you're paying a lot of times. And it's sad to say, but when you put them in a public scenario, sometimes it's not the same. Again, we know a lot of awesome teachers, a lot of great teachers.
Yes.
We also have heard of a lot of teachers that are a little overwhelmed with this threes program that opened up in September. We heard comments about them and, just in general from other providers that work with parents that have taken their children out of the daycares and placed them into the public school threes program this past year. And some are doing well, and I feel some of them are just they're just getting by.
They're getting by.
But and some of them, some people have mentioned, we talked to so many providers before doing this video. We feel like a lot of them, the parents have complained one important thing, that their kids are they have stayed the same. So they haven't increased in what they're learning. They haven't increased in their social development. So they haven't increased so much or furthered their understanding of things or furthered their learning from when they were in the environment with the providers. Some of them have done great, but for the most part, it has been the older children. It has been like the 4-year-olds that have done better. But in terms of the kids that go in before they're 3 into the threes program, or kids that have been put in the threes program, it hasn't been what the expectations were. So, but anyway, those are our thoughts on this topic. Thank you so much again for watching our video, for hearing our opinion and our intake based on us being moms, us working at a daycare, us doing the research and the training we have taken for years on these topics. So thank you so much again for your time. Thank you so much. Don't forget to smile and stay tuned for episode 5 next week, Sunday at 8 o'clock. Bye-bye.